The last one, what happens here? Just kind of run on through this stuff. Pharaoh says, okay, this baby thing isn't going anywhere. Let's not have the midwives do this. Let's throw the male babies into the river. Now, by the way, is the Nile River God? Is there a Nile River God? So we'll throw them in the river. Question, are there critters in the Nile River? Big critters. You throw the babies in there, babies helpless. Babies are helpless. You throw them in the river, the baby's going to drown. If he doesn't drown, one of the crocodiles or whatever they got there, or there's got some hippos, they got some interesting things there. Are there manatees in the Nile River, do you know? I don't know either. You got me off on this manatees thing now. But anyways, the babies would die. Now what's really cool here is Pharaoh was using the Nile River to destroy the infants. How does God use the Nile River? Does God use the Nile River to deliver Moses? The very thing that Pharaoh was trying to use to destroy the infants, God turns it and uses it, and Moses gets floated down the river, special delivery, man, right into the arms of Pharaoh's daughter. Okay? God ships him down. Do you remember they made this little box thing and they coated it with tar and put Moses in it, and shoom, he goes down the river, and Pharaoh's daughter comes out. She picks up the box and stuff, and she says, whoa, I'm drawing this baby out of the water, and so she names him Drawn Out, which means what? Drawn Out is Moshe. Moshe, or you guys call him Moses. So Moses means drawn out. His name is basically the one drawn out of the water like this, and his name becomes Moses with this. She picks him up, by the way, and she says, oh, wow, this must be one of the Hebrew children. Now, how did she know that this was a Hebrew child? Is it possible that he was wrapped in a kind of cloth that the Hebrews would have made? That's possible that he was wrapped in a cloth. You know what I'm saying? That they would have had distinctive claws, different from different cultures and stuff. That's possible. Is it also possible, Eric, what are you going to suggest? Yeah, she picks up the baby and says, holy cow, this kid's circumcised already and stuff. And so she may have associated that with the Jews as well. By the way, who's standing by and says, hey, I could take care of that kid for you. You need a babysitter? Yeah, Miriam. Okay, Miriam, his older sister, and then he gets taken back to his family.
Wasn't also one of the reasons why she kept him is because one of the goddesses of the river, it was as if the goddess was giving him a gift?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, the suggestion here is that the Pharaoh's daughter would have suggested that the river had just provided her, and maybe she was barren or something, and the goddess or god of the Nile had just presented her. That seems like a likely possibility of how she would have understood it from her perspective. Now, what we know is that it was Jehovah shipping them right down in there. And so it's kind of like, again, do you see this? I'm trying to bring this up again. Do you see God taking that which is evil and turning it to what's good? And why that's important. You say, why is that thinking? It's going to be important in all of your lives. When your lives start falling apart and there's really, really bad stuff happening to you, what I want to tell you is God can take that bad stuff and give it a few years and stuff, and God will take the worst things that ever happened to you in your life and all of a sudden turn those around for good. And you say, Hildebrandt, it can't be. This thing is so bad for me. It can't be. I want to tell you, some of the worst things in your life, God will turn around, will actually be the things that become some of the most important things in redemptive process for you. And I say that now, actually, to be honest with you, we're going through the situations now in our own family right now. And things, and I've seen it happen over and over and over again. And so when really bad stuff starts happening, I want to tell you, when really bad stuff starts happening, man, you start looking up because God's at work, man. Now you may not understand it, and frankly, you may not understand it for 2 or 3 years or even longer. But God's at work. When that disaster hits, man, you look up. He's on the move. And anyways, okay. Now 3 stages in Moses' life. These are fairly straightforward. For the first 40 years, Moses was did Moses initially get raised by his own family, reared by his own family? Yeah, so his sister Miriam, Aaron, he would have been trained, and they were Hebrews, they were Levites, and so they were raised by, and then after he probably became of age, you get these rites of passage. Do you know what I'm talking about, rites of passage? Jewish kids' rites of passage around bar mitzvah time. Do you ever hear of bar mitzvah? Some of you may be aware of confirmation. Has anybody been through confirmation? 12, 13 years old, you kind of are welcomed into the adult kind of world and things. And so there's this movement from child to adult and this rites of passage. By the way, different cultures have different rites of passage okay? And so, anyway, so he was reared by Pharaoh's daughter, as his son. Would he have been very literate? Would he have been trained in the wisdom and literature of Egypt? Yeah, Moses would have been very highly trained. Okay, yeah. Hannah?
So is the first stage of his life being raised by his family or being raised by Pharaoh's daughter?
Yes.
What?
Yes. Okay. She said, is he being raised by his family or by Pharaoh's daughter? And the answer is yes, both those. Early in his life, he's raised by his family. For the dominant part of his life, it would be like Pharaoh's daughter. Yeah, that's the first stage of his life, 40 years there. And then the second 40 years of his life, he goes out and he's a shepherd out in Midian. Now, by the way, when you think about shepherd, you think about, this guy out on the side of the hill watching the sheep and stuff. Do you know how boring that is? Have you ever seen sheep? I want to tell you, I have not seen in my life much stupider animals. Sheep are, I'm being honest. I'll take you over just on by Bradley Palmer State Park. The guy's got sheep. They are dumb, really dumb. No, there's animals that are smart. Dogs, are there really smart dogs? Yeah, that understand they almost understand what you're saying, okay? Sheep are just the opposite of that. And when you're out there watching them day after day in the desert, is that a really, really, really boring job? Okay, so when you think about this shepherd thing, be careful you don't idealize it. It's really hard labor and things. But let me just run through this stuff. The desert shepherd for 40 years in Midian, and this is when he marries Zipporah, his wife, has some kids while he's out in Midian. Midian is Sinai. This is out in the Sinai desert, and the tribe that he's with is the Midianites with Jethro and Zipporah, his wife. Now, then God comes and calls him and basically tells him, go back from the desert, leave the desert, go back and be a deliverer. And for 40 years then, Moses leads the sheep of Israel through the desert. Now he's a shepherd of Israel. And so he turns in his sheep for Israel and leads them through the desert, brings them out and things. And so there's this play on the different types of sheep. Okay? Now, let's look at what Moses' relationship with God was like. And this is chapters 3 and 4 and following. The call of Moses. Many of the people in the Bible, you're going to get this vocation or this calling where God comes and calls a prophet and he calls a person to his service. Moses is going to receive an extended call from God, and I want to just see how Moses and God interact here. But before I do that, I want to jump in here just to say, why did God do the Exodus? Why did God deliver them at this point? The text tells us that God comes down and says that he is going to deliver them as a result of their prayers. And what I'm trying to suggest to you with this verse that I'm going to read next is that prayer is exceedingly powerful. The whole Exodus is prompted by the Israelite prayer. And here it is. The Lord said in chapter 3, verse 7, the Lord said in 3:7, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I will come down and rescue them. He heard their cries, their pleas for help, and he says, I am going to come down and rescue them. Prayer makes a difference, and this is the prayers then. God listens and comes down. Now, and what he does is he says, okay, we got to have a deliverer. So Moses, let's go. And is it all right ever to resist God's will? When God calls a person, did the person ever resist the call of God? Moses is going to be one of the big figures, huge figures in the Old Testament. Let's look at his call and how he says, when God comes to him, he says, God, whatever your will for my life, I just want to follow you. God, just take me and use me for your service. And that's what Moses says, right? Excuse me. Not quite what it says here in our Bibles. God comes to him in chapter 3, and in verse 11, let's just get the interaction between God and Moses. Okay, God comes down and says, I'm going to bring my people out of Egypt with a strong arm and an outstretched hand and stuff. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring out the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you. Does Moses jump on and say, okay, God, yeah, let's bring them out of Egypt? No, Moses says, who am I that I would go to Pharaoh? And God says, Moses, it's not who you are. It is, I will be with you. What is the name, I will be with you? What is the Hebrew term? Does anybody hear a word of God there? Does anybody know the word Emmanuel? Emmanuel means God with us. And so when God says, I will be with you, this is kind of the Emmanuel. I will be with you. And God says, okay, Moses, I know you can't do this going to Pharaoh. I will come with you. I will be with you. And Moses says, well, God, if you are with me, who can be against me? Let's go. No, he doesn't do that either. He backs off again. And the next time he says this, and this is in chapter 3, verse 13 and following. Moses said, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is your name? What is his name? Then what shall I tell them? Moses said, excuse me, God, excuse me, I don't know your name. Like, hi, I'm Moshe. What's your name? I just don't know your name. I mean, I go to them and tell them some God in the desert. I met some God in the desert. They're going to think I'm dehydrated or something, and my brain's gone. He says, "What's your name?" Anyways, I don't even know your name. By the way, is that a big thing to ask God about His name? Yeah. And what does God say? There's a bush that's burning, and out of this bush that's burning comes this statement. And God said to Moses, "Yehyeh v'yehyeh, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you." Now, what is this I am that I am? You say, wait a minute, Hildebrandt, you got this here. Can you pronounce this for me? What's the problem? Why can't you pronounce this? No vowels. By the way, did the Jews drop the vowels out on purpose so that it can't be pronounced? Why did they do that? Did they want the name of Jehovah pronounced? No, because they're afraid that you'll take the name of the Lord your God in vain. So you take the vowels out, you can't say it. And so this, now by the way, if you're going to insert vowels, there would be an A here and an E here, and it would probably, they used to say Jehovah. Has anybody ever heard that phrase, Jehovah? Jehovah is how they used to say it now with our modern techniques and stuff. The A would be here, so it would be Yahweh. And the E before the E would be between the W and the H. Okay, so it'd be Yahweh. So today it's Yahweh or Yahweh. Yeah, the W can actually sound like a V, probably does. So Yahweh or Yahweh. And this is God's most sacred name. This is the I am that I am kind of thing. And we'll look at that in a minute. Now, Moses receives God's most sacred name, I am that I am. But does Moses follow God right then? No. He makes up another excuse. And he says, hey, if I go down there, chapter 4, verse 1, Moses said, and what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? Then the Lord said, okay, Moses, they won't believe you? What do you got in your hand, Moses? Moses says, what? I got a stick in my hand, staff. God says, what? Throw it down on the ground. What happens to that staff? It becomes a snake. Now, what's going to happen when he goes to Egypt? He's going to throw it down. What are the wise men going to do, or the magicians going to do? They're going to do the same thing. And what snake's going to eat the other one? Moses is going to eat it. Question, is a snake a power symbol in Egypt? Have you ever seen Pharaoh's hat, the hat that pharaohs wear? What's coming out of the front of Pharaoh's hat? It's the cobra, okay? It's a snake. Okay, and so what you have happening here is that there's a power play going on between Jehovah God and Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's snakes are going to get what? Eaten by Moses, okay? And this staff. So what you have is this power play between Moses and Pharaoh, and God's going to defeat the snake of Egypt and stuff. So this, he's giving him, the staff in your hand, throw it down. Moses still won't give in. And so Moses starts next. He starts, but God, I can't talk real well. A lot of people think that Moses was a stutterer, that Moses said, I can't speak well. Some people think he's a stutterer. Others think that he probably was talking about rhetorical skills, that he didn't have. He's been out talking to sheep and stuff, and he realizes that when you go into Pharaoh's court, you have to have rhetorical skills. And he says, all my rhetorical skills are long gone, God. So it's probably either one of those two. He's a stutterer and things. And God comes to him and says, Moses says, I can't talk right. And God says, Moses, who made your mouth? Yeah, it's like, I made your mouth. If I want you to say, hey man, I can make a donkey talk back and stuff if I want to talk you, So Moses, who made your mouth? Does Moses give up yet? He still doesn't give up. So finally in chapter 7 and 4, later part and then on to 7, Moses says, okay, God, don't. No. I'm not going to go. Send somebody else. Send somebody else. Again, do you see Moses' reluctance? He's so reluctant to follow God. And that's what I'm saying. Beware of people that are, I'm just going to follow God, and to do His will is my heart's desire and stuff. All I'm telling you, here's Moses, one of the greatest men that ever lived. And you see him, he's what? All I'm saying is be careful about the braggadocio. I see a lot of that in our culture now. And when somebody actually faces the real God, you aren't out there saying, yeah, man, I'm going to do it. Your shoes are off and your face is to the ground and stuff. So be careful with that. Send somebody else. What's God do? Say, hey, Moses, you had a brother Aaron. He's on his way to meet you, and he's going to meet you right now. And as a matter of fact, Moses, I know you can't speak real well, so I'm telling you what you're going to do. You, Moses, are going to speak to Aaron. Aaron is going to be your prophet. You're going to be like a god, and Aaron's going to be your prophet. What does that mean? He's setting up a structure. As God speaks to the prophet, and the prophet speaks to the people, so now Moses is going to speak to Aaron, and Aaron's going to speak to the people. So it tells us, what is the role of the prophet? The role of the prophet is to speak the word of God. And now Moses is going to be like a god to Aaron, and Aaron is going to speak. And so you get this structure, this almost prophetic, well, not almost, it is a prophetic structure, and Aaron is going to be like a prophet.